So, to explain to you what the TPP and the TPIP and TISA really are, I want to show you kind of 5 items that are included in what I'm calling globalism. Globalism is that belief that the world it should subordinate all national concerns here. So the first level, and really at the bottom, even though it's going to be on the top of the screen, is liberalism. All right. Now, practically everybody talks in terms of conservatism and liberalism. On the radio, on the TV, he's a liberal, I'm a conservative, and when you're running for office, I don't know about you, but when you're running for office, if you're a Republican, you always put conservative there. Well, as far as I'm concerned, the only reason why you have a conservative is to give legitimacy to the idea of liberalism. Because all this is a suspension of rational thought processes. Liberalism is when you can look at a group of words here that make up a sentence, and it means something other than what the words say. Let's take the U.S. Constitution, for instance. The Constitution to these people doesn't mean what it says. It means what someone says it says. You can't rely on just reading it yourself. You have to rely on someone else to tell you what those simple words mean. Well, that's what liberalism is. They've created this idea that everything is relative. There is no absolute truth. All truth is relative. Your truth may be different than my truth. It's all different. Well, that's what liberalism is, and it's a form of warping the brain into believing just crazy, crazy things. Any liberals in here? No. All right, the next step up the ladder is socialism. Now, once you warp the brain, you created these people that really can't think straight, at least politically. Then the next thing you do is you try to suspend individuality, the pursuit of self-interest, in the favor of state interest. Okay, they all automatically are not dealing right with their own self-interest here. Well, let's just tell them that the best thing to do is, you're not important. What's important is a greater good, a greater vision of what this world can be. That's what socialism is. And so we need to subordinate your individuality and your pursuit of self-interest in favor of state interests. And so now they have this constitutional doctrine that they've even created that's called compelling state interest, or compelling government interest. It's born out of this idea that the government itself is a party in the transaction. The government itself is an individual. It has its own personality, its own likes and dislikes, and we've got to consider what the government wants rather than considering just what the people want, even though the government is just a thing, it's a set of rules. But when you don't understand rational thought processes in the first place, then you believe that it's not just a set of rules, the government is a person. We need to consider his feelings here. The next step up is communism. And there's only one reason for communism that I can think of, and I've thought about all this a lot, you can probably tell, and that is to enforce socialism. All right, once the people finally figure out, hey, this isn't working for me. I'm really miserable here, and I don't want to do this anymore, and people kind of break out of that thought process and look for another way of life. We've got to have some way to enforce it. Well, communism is the police state. It's the surveillance state. It's the prisons. It's any way that they have to control you. It's even the mechanism to decide what your house looks like, where the government tells you what color you can paint your house, or where you can have a flag in the front yard, or practically any of these crazy things that we've been seeing on the news. That is stepping into the enforcement mechanism of socialism, and that's what communism is. The next step up we're going to go back and look at in just a second. See, none of this stuff will pay for itself. Socialism is not going to pay for itself. It takes a lot of money to build the prisons. It takes a lot of money to build the surveillance state. But there's no way to pay for all that stuff unless they have an economic engine. So what they've created here, and you can see it really good in what used to be called communist China. Yes, it is communist, but they've got a corporate economic engine like nobody's business over there. And that's what's powering them to be able to control all of these things. Then on top of that, that's when you get to globalism. And globalism is a parallel construction to this one right here, where globalism suspends state interests in favor of global interests. So you suspended individuality and self-interest in favor of state interest right here. So all this does, it takes it to the next step. Okay, by the way, the country thing, don't worry about it. Open borders, we're not gonna keep anybody out here. This is all, everything is good. Come on in, and that's how they do that. All right, so now I want to take it back to the corporate fascist economic engine to explain to you what that is and how it works and how they want to make it pervade the entire world. Okay, first of all, I want to explain what corporate fascism is. You've heard the term corporate fascism, probably. Well, it is a system by which the people's government over time becomes so heavily influenced by corporate special interests who have the means necessary to purchase influence at the very highest levels of the people's government, that the government is for all practical purposes eventually taken over by those corporate special interests. At that point, the government becomes almost solely a tool of corporate special interests. Now, if that's not what we have in Washington, D.C., I don't know what we do. They've created laws to where it'll restrict how much I can contribute to the campaign of one of my favorite candidates, but yet corporations can put all the money they want to. They can create their own PAC. As long as the money comes out of the PAC, then it's legal. So the corporations just put their money into a PAC, and then the PAC funnels millions and millions of dollars into selected campaigns, and that's how they do it. Well, we live in a corporate fascist state. That's how they were able to accomplish that. All right, so this is the model. We talked about the TPP, TISA, and the TTIP. Look at all these nations here. These are the nations of the TPP, and they're all common with the United States. The United States is in the middle of all these. If the United States is not there, they can't do it. So the whole thing breaks down as soon as the USA is not in there. But notice one set of nations is not in here. You know, the largest continent on earth, Africa, is not here. There's a reason why they don't want to be partners with Africa. Africa is their gold mine. Africa, that's why Africa stays so poor. Is because it's nothing but a mine for these people to get all the raw materials that they need, print the money out of the air, and convince their local leaders to accept the money that they print out of the air and extract all the resources. So Africa's not part of this. Well, Gaddafi wanted to make Africa significant. Gaddafi was creating a gold-backed currency that all of the nations of Africa would require if you want to buy their stuff. Well, why do you think they took Gaddafi out? Well, when that happened, nobody's organizing the gold-backed currency anymore. That's what all of that was about. All right, so in the middle of this economic engine, that's what this is here. In the middle of that, that's the central banking system. It's the world central banking system. It is the Federal Reserve, it's the ECB, it's the Japanese Central Bank, it's all of the central banking systems, because they're really just one system. And if say the Federal Reserve can't can't buy bonds, then they'll get the Japanese Central Bank to buy bonds. Whatever it is, they all work together in order to keep this system going. So in the middle is a central banking system, and it is predominantly centered in New York, in Manhattan, in Wall Street. Then outside from that, what happens is that they loan currency into the world. Now, you may or may not know this, but I'll repeat it for the umpteenth time of talking, but all of our dollars, all of our money is loaned into existence. There's no dollars that just come out of the air and start circulating. They all have to be borrowed. And so every dollar that you have, either you borrowed it or someone else borrowed it and paid it to you. But all the money that circulates in our money supply is borrowed at interest, and someone is paying the interest on all those dollars. And then when they go back, after they pay off a loan, the dollars cease to exist. That's how it works. But this is on an international scale. So you've got this international central banking system, and they're loaning currency into all these nations here. Well, the next step is it's all got to be paid back. So they've got a debt service coming back to them. So this is the way that the system works, the way the system operates. So there's always got to be more and more and more currency that's being issued in order to pay the interest on the currency that's already been issued. That's the way the system works. It's a complex system, but it's a very simple idea. It's a Ponzi scheme. That's the way that all of these international banks work. So the way that you destroy this is simply cut it off. You cut off the funding to this. If these guys don't own the franchise to operate these central banks, and say all of a sudden all these nations, they started up with national currencies that didn't have to be paid back to banks, well, that means this whole system breaks down, and the funding mechanism for globalism worldwide breaks down. Well, we're going to see that that's essentially what Mr. Trump has been doing. He's been doing that right there. He's cutting them off. He's cutting off the oxygen to the system. But unless you know what you're looking for, all of these decisions he's been making, you would never make the connection that this is really what he's doing.